It started with a message. One transmission bouncing across the emptiness of space like a warning that arrived too late. This is Commander Alan Rake. Earth is no longer under your control. The voice was calm, steady, but there was fire. In it, the kind that made even the coldest of alien generals sit back in silence. 3 months earlier, Earth had been just another blue marble in the galaxy, easy pickings for the Zorak Dominion. They'd rolled over hundreds of planets before. Civilizations far more advanced had crumbled at their feet, so when the High Lords of Zorak looked at humans, they laughed. Primitive, disorganized, emotionally unstable, said General Corzin, as he threw his clawed hand through the hologram of Earth. They'll kneel in weeks, and for a while, they did. Zorak ships blocked out the skies over major cities, governments surrendered, satellites were hijacked, soldiers were disarmed. The world froze, watching helplessly as alien boots marched down their streets. Resistance, movements were crushed before they could even organize. Every major nation had signed treaties under duress just to avoid annihilation. But they didn't understand humans. Not really. See, humans are weird. They'll cry at cartoons and then build weapons out of scrap metal. They'll beg for peace 1 minute, then burn your whole empire down for hurting someone they love. And the Zoraks, well, they pushed the wrong buttons. It began in a small town in Nevada, where a group of high school kids watched their science teacher get dragged away for trying to protect his class. No one ever saw him again. That night, those same kids hijacked a supply drone using a school laptop, a car battery, and Wi-Fi from a donut shop. They crashed it into the local garrison. The resistance was born with teenagers and fire in their hearts. By the end of the week, 12 more drone stations were down. By the end of the month, over 3,000 humans across the globe were fighting back. Not with alien tech, but with whatever they could get their hands on. Rusted rifles, homemade explosives, hackers hijacking supply chains, farmers hiding soldiers in hay trucks, grandmothers smuggling messages under bread loaves. They weren't just fighting, they were adapting, and that's what scared the Zoraks. Commander Rake was a former soldier, dishonorably discharged for punching a superior officer, who ordered an airstrike on a civilian village. He wasn't a hero, he didn't even like people much. But when his sister was vaporized trying to shield a bus full of kids, something inside him snapped. He picked up his old gear, dug up a forgotten bunker in the Rockies, and started broadcasting across stolen Zorak frequencies. Every time they call us weak, he said in one of his first messages, remember this. We're the species that survived ice ages, world wars, and reality TV. They're not ready for what we are when we're cornered. That line went viral. Even Zorak intelligence couldn't block it fast enough. Entire cities began resisting. Zorak soldiers started disappearing. Some turned up with notes carved into their armor. Not so weak now, are we? General Corzin was furious. Burn their forests, level their cities, make them remember who rules this galaxy. But humans had already remembered something else, who they really were when everything was taken from them. Now, 3 months in, the tide was turning, and when Rake hijacked the Dominion's main battlefield to deliver his message, millions of Zoraks watched. This is Commander Alan Rake. Earth is no longer under your control. The camera zoomed out. Behind him, alien warships were falling from the sky in flames. Human fighters zipped through the smoke like angry hornets. Flags were raised on reclaimed ground. Rake looked straight into the camera, eyes blazing. "Is this the weak species you said couldn't fight back?" The Dominion wasn't used to fear. For centuries, fear was something others felt about them. But now their command halls were quiet, tense. Even the war strategists, those with brains and cold logic running through their veins, were stalling. The human problem wasn't going away. On the Zorak command ship, Jernex Prime, General Courson stared at a cracked visor recovered from the battlefield. Blood still stained the edges, but it wasn't alien blood, it was Zorak, their elite. Soldiers were being slaughtered by what their archives still labeled as a low-threat, chaotic species. He slammed his fist down, shattering the table beneath him. "What do they have?" he snarled at his second-in-command, Yarrick. "How are they doing this without energy weapons, without starships?" Yarrick flinched. "Sir, they're using rage and creativity and vengeance. The humans are not fighting like any species we've conquered. They don't wait. They strike. They use emotions as strategy." Courson's eyes narrowed. He'd underestimated them once. Never again. Back on Earth, Commander Rake's network had grown. What started as small clusters of resistance fighters had now turned into full-fledged militia groups, each connected through an underground human-made satellite network called EchoNet, pieced together from stolen Zorak comm arrays, dish parts, and sheer stubbornness. In Berlin, an ex-engineer named Lara patched together a stolen Zorak weapon into a portable EMP cannon. It could knock out an entire alien tank convoy in one blast. In Nairobi, a 12-year-old boy hacked a Dominion AI drone and programmed it to play local tribal music at full volume before exploding near a command post. The story went viral. He was dubbed the Beat Bomb Kid. The resistance didn't just fight. They mocked. They humiliated their enemy. And Rake? He became a myth, a voice that came through every broadcast with a mix of fire and calm fury. Nobody knew exactly where he was, only that whenever he spoke, a Dominion outpost seemed to explode hours later. He spoke again the day they took back New York. 3 months ago they thought they had us. We begged, we broke, we bled. But they didn't crush us. They forged us. They made something they weren't ready for. A world united not by borders, but by fire. In the footage, Zorak airships tumbled into the Hudson. Civilians dragged alien soldiers through the streets, not to kill them, but to show them that Earth remembered everything. One Dominion officer, captured alive, sobbed as she was interviewed on camera. "They don't fight like the others," she whispered. "They learned while bleeding." The video went viral again, this time across the galaxy. Other enslaved planets watched Earth's rise like it was a beacon. If humans could do this, maybe they could too. Inside his bunker, Rake stared at a cracked photo of his sister. "They thought we'd stay on our knees," he said quietly. "But they forgot. We were born crawling and taught ourselves to run." Then he looked up at the screen where Dominion reinforcements had just landed in Rio, trying to retake what they'd lost. He smirked. Time to show them what weak really looks like. The first few minutes after the Zorak dropships landed in Rio were quiet. Too quiet. Dominion Commander Verloc stood tall on the scorched rooftop of what used to be a hospital, scanning the city skyline. The buildings were mostly still, some reduced to skeletons. Human resistance had been active here just a week ago, but now there was no sign of life. "Pathetic," he muttered, motioning his troops forward. "Purge Sector 5, scorch protocol, leave nothing." But what he didn't know was this: the humans weren't hiding. They were waiting. Underneath the ruined subway station just 3 blocks away, Lara, the Berlin engineer, now led a global tech unit they jokingly called the Mad Sparks. Half were ex-military, others were rogue hackers, and a few were just civilians who'd learned to solder and fight at the same time. She tightened a rusted bolt on a cobbled-together device that looked like a microwave mated with a car battery.
"EMP cannons ready," she said, sweat rolling down her face. "We've only got 1 shot. After this it melts." The teen beside her grinned. "So? No pressure?" "Only the fate of the city," Lara replied with a dry smile.
Them Zorak patrols marched confidently. Their sensors scanned for movement. Their eyes were blind to human madness. Then came the signal. Rake's voice. All radios hijacked again. "Welcome to Earth, Part 3. Hope you packed extra ammo." Boom. The EMP blast didn't just take out the Zorak patrol. It crippled every Dominion sensor, drone, and defense bot within a 6-mile radius. Their ships above Rio flickered and tilted, power systems failing mid-air, and the humans came pouring out of the shadows. Children who'd seen too much, mothers with hollowed eyes and heavy rifles, former janitors and doctors and street racers, all fighting side by side, not because they were soldiers, but because they had nothing left to lose. Commander Verloc's calm shattered in seconds. He watched as his elite units were overwhelmed, not by superior firepower, but by sheer chaos. Humans didn't follow predictable patterns. They flanked with skateboards. They used mirrors to blind drones. They set up holograms in alleyways to lure patrols into explosive traps. One soldier, barely 20, charged screaming through a cloud of dust, wielding a crowbar like it was Excalibur. He bashed open a Zorak-armored walker and tossed in a homemade napalm grenade made of cooking oil and fertilizer. The Dominion had never prepared for this level of insanity. By sunset, Rio was burning, but not in surrender. It burned with resistance. Smoke rose black and thick while resistance banners unfurled over collapsed towers. Back in the Rockies, Rake watched the satellite feed. He didn't cheer, he didn't smile, he simply lit a cigarette and stared. "They're learning," he whispered. "Not just how to fight, but how to win." And far across the galaxy, a different species watched Earth's broadcasts with wide, glassy eyes. The Creel, enslaved for nearly a century under Dominion rule, huddled in hidden bunkers, replaying human footage over and over. The old ones called it madness, the young ones called it hope, and somewhere deep in the Creel resistance, one voice finally said, "If the humans can bleed the gods, maybe it's time we do the same." The Creel uprising started with silence. No explosions, no declarations, no banners, just a Dominion outpost that went dark, then another and another. General Coulson sat in the war chamber aboard the Zorak flagship, surrounded by static-filled monitors. Each one blinked red, one by one, each representing a lost post, a missing commander, a growing fire they couldn't contain. "What is this madness?" he growled, pacing. Yarrick, his second in command, kept his voice low. "It's spreading, sir. The humans. Their rebellion has become a broadcast."
"Other species are seeing it. And acting Corson slammed a clawed hand against the table. "They are unevolved animals, filthy, emotional, chaotic beasts. How are they doing this?" But Yarrick had no answer, because deep down he knew.
The truth. They were losing. Not just a war, but control. Fear was no longer their weapon. It belonged to the humans now, and Rake, he saw it coming before anyone else did. Inside the bunker, he stared at EchoNet's cracked monitor as blurry footage played. A Creel boy, barely older than 10, holding a Dominion helmet aloft while a crowd of his people cheered behind him. No slogans.
"No screaming, just action," Rake said to Lara, who sat across from him reloading a sidearm. "You think they're ready to fight?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, but they're ready to stop dying quietly." Outside, the wind howled through.
The Rockies. The world was rebuilding and burning at the same time. Cities had become strongholds. Underground bunkers were now hives of invention. Humans had evolved under pressure, not biologically, but in their spirit, in their strategy. Rake had started with fury. But now he was planning something bigger. A strike. Not just to defend Earth, but to hit back. Deep in the EchoNet system, Lara and her techs had discovered an opening. The Dominion's warp gate, a massive ring-shaped structure orbiting Jupiter, was being used to bring in fresh reinforcements every week. Destroy the gate, and they'd trap the Zorax inside. The solar system. They came here thinking it would be a slaughter, Rake told his team as they gathered in a darkened war room. Now we'll show them what it means to be hunted. The plan was madness. Use a stolen Dominion cruiser, pilot it straight into the warp gate, and detonate the core at point-blank range. Suicide. Unless you were already dead inside, I'll...
"Do it!" said Juno, a former Dominion prisoner, scarred and hollow-eyed, who had escaped with burns all down her side.
They took everything from me. Let me take something from them. Rake stared at her. There's no coming back. I don't want to come back. And just like that, the mission had a name. Operation Bloodgate. The next 72 hours were chaos. Teams scrambled. Engineers gutted the stolen cruiser. Hackers broke into Dominion traffic systems to forge clearance codes. Resistance cells from all over Earth synchronized their clocks. This wasn't just a battle. This was Earth punching the stars in the mouth. And above Jupiter, while Dominion ships floated arrogantly around the warp gate, Juno climbed into the pilot seat of a ship once used to enslave her people. The engines hummed. The countdown began, and Rake's final message to the Dominion went live across every frequency. We're done surviving. Now we're remembering. Every child you took, every city you leveled, every scream you buried in the dirt. We remember it all. And now we return the favor. The feed ended, the ship accelerated, and Juno smiled through tears as the stars lit up around her. The stolen Dominion cruiser hurtled toward the warp gate, its stolen transponder code holding. For now. Juno sat in the pilot's chair, strapped in tight, the ship rattling around her. Alarms blinked red, warning lights screamed, but her face? Calm, serene even, like she'd already died once and everything now was just noise. From the comms, Lara's voice cracked through. Juno, you're approaching visual on the gate. Dominion scanners haven't pinged you yet. Still running cold. Copy that, Juno whispered, adjusting her course. Tell Rake he better have a drink ready for me in hell. Lara chuckled, her voice trembling. "You're not going to hell, you're sending the devils there." The warp gate came into view, a monstrous ring of pulsating metal floating above Jupiter's thick storm clouds. Like a god's eye watching the solar system, its center was glowing, ready to spit out another wave of Dominion reinforcements. But not today. Back on Earth, Rake stood surrounded by silence. Even the wind outside the bunker had stopped, like the planet itself was holding its breath. The entire echo net was tuned into Juno's feed. Every human, every rebel, every slave species across the stars. And then the transponder failed. Juno's ship went red on Dominion sensors. The gate's defense cannons activated too late. She flipped open the detonator cover, exposing a crude, hand-wired trigger. Her voice came over the comms, quiet, broken, and proud. "This is for the ones who never got a chance to fight back." She hit the switch. Light, heat, silence, then shockwaves. The warp gate shattered like glass, its ring exploding outward, fragments cascading into Dominion ships nearby. One vessel snapped in half from the blast. Another was sucked into Jupiter's gravity well. Communication blackouts rolled across the system like dominoes. The stars blinked, and Earth roared. In cities across the planet, people screamed, cried, hugged strangers, and threw fists into the air. They didn't even know Juno's last name, but they knew what she'd done. She had slammed the door shut on the Empire. Inside the Zorak flagship, General Coulson watched it all unfold on a live holofeed. He didn't speak. He just stared at the wreckage of their greatest portal and finally understood. The humans weren't fighting like a cornered species anymore. They were fighting like conquerors. Yarek stepped forward carefully. "Sir, our fleet is trapped in the Sol system. No reinforcements, no exits, and we've lost 8 more outposts in the outer colonies. Other species are rising." Coulson turned slowly, eyes burning. "Do you know what happens when the galaxy stops fearing us?" Yarik shook his head. "We become prey," Coulson snarled. Back on Earth in the bunker, Rake stood over a table as maps updated in real time. He didn't cheer. He never did, but he picked up a red marker and drew a wide X over the word Jupiter. Then he looked at his team. "We have momentum, we have unity, we have rage. Now we take the fight to them." Lara leaned against the table, arms crossed. "You're talking about space, going up there. I'm talking about finishing this." Rake paused, then added, "They called us weak. Let's make sure no one ever says that again." The stars looked different when you were chasing vengeance through them. Commander Rake had never been off-planet before. Few humans had. But now, 2 months after the fall of the Jupiter warp gate, Earth's resistance was building something no one thought possible, a fleet, not sleek, silver spaceships like in sci-fi movies. No, these were brutal, patched-together monsters. The D. Havoc Dawn, Earth's first war cruiser, was a Frankenstein of stolen Dominion parts, broken satellites, scrap metal, and human ingenuity. The engines ran hot, the hull rattled, and the targeting system sometimes needed a kick to work. But it flew, and it fought. Inside the command deck, Rake stood beside Lara, now chief engineer and co-commander. She hadn't slept in 36 hours.
No one had, but her eyes were alive. "We've got 12 ships ready," she said, wiping sweat from her brow. "4 are fully armed, the rest..." Well, they'll crash into something real hard if they have to. Rake nodded. That's all I need.
The mission was simple. Strike the Zorak fleet's core base near Tau Ceti, the stronghold responsible for every strategic move against Earth since the beginning. It was a symbol, a fortress, a message. Destroy it, and the galaxy would know Earth wasn't just surviving, it was taking control, but Rake wasn't blind to the odds. The Zorak still had superior numbers, tech, and backup systems Earth couldn't match. What humans had was something the Dominion couldn't measure: obsession, pain, memory, and a wild card. A message had arrived 2 weeks prior, encrypted, hidden in an old Earth transmission frequency. It simply said, "I was once one of them. Now I want them to burn." Attached was a full schematic of the Tau Ceti base. Blueprints, weak spots, rotation schedules, all accurate. The sender, an unknown source who signed only as Sarn, a Zorak defector. Rake didn't trust it. Couldn't, but he couldn't ignore it either. Maybe it was bait, maybe it was real. Either way, they were going, as the Havoc Dawn ascended from the edge of Earth's atmosphere. Resistance fighters across the world watched. Screens flickered with shaky footage of ships rising like angry stars. From bunkers to ruins to mountain camps they whispered one phrase: "Make them bleed." And in the shadows of the solar system, the Resistance wasn't alone. The Creel had begun sending messages. Short ones. Encouraging, curious. One simply said, "When you strike, we will too. Thank you for teaching us how to hate." Rake stood at the viewport, looking at the darkness ahead. He remembered his sister's laugh, the smell of coffee in the old world, the way cities used to feel alive.
"I don't want revenge," he muttered. Lara looked at him, confused. "What?" "I want history," Rake said, eyes still forward. "I want them to write our names in the ruins of their empire." And as the fleet approached Tau Ceti, alarms
Started to ping. Dominion ships, hundreds. They were waiting. Rake smiled. Good. Let's show them what a weak species looks like when it stops being afraid. The Tau Ceti system lit up like a war god's funeral. From the moment the Havoc Dawn and its ragtag fleet dropped out of stealth mode, alarms screamed across the Dominion stronghold. Lights flickered red. Automated defenses whirred to life. Plasma. Cannons rotated, scanning. The Zoraks had prepared for this, but what they didn't know, they couldn't even imagine, was just how far humans were willing to go. "Battle formation, Delta," Rake ordered, his voice ice. "Split the fleet. We charge from 3 directions. Target their shield arrays first. Leave the command tower for last." Lara was already on the comms, barking orders. Sparks flew overhead as the Dawn's shields absorbed a direct hit from Haui.
"An enemy destroyer." The ship groaned under the pressure, but it held. She grinned like a mad woman. "They're hitting harder than we expected." "They always do," Rake muttered. "But we hit smarter." From the far left flank, one of Earth's
Retrofitted ships, the Red Widow, dove beneath the Dominion's line and launched a barrage of electromagnetic pulse torpedoes. Dominion shielding flickered. Then from the right, another Earth ship, this one made from the gutted remains of a civilian shuttle, slammed straight into a Dominion hangar bay in a suicidal blaze of fire. The explosion ripped the outer, wall wide open, and through that hole resistance pods launched. Soldiers, humans, charging into the belly of the beast. Inside the enemy base, chaos erupted. Dominion soldiers, tall and armored, were ambushed by humans wearing bulletproof vests, scavenged helmets, and raw rage in their eyes, and leading them, at the front of it all, was San. Yes, he was real, not a trick, not a trap. But he wasn't what they expected either. His Zorak armor had been defaced, painted with human slogans. His claws were sharp, but his eyes were haunted. He moved like a ghost with vengeance in its blood. "I was born in this fortress," San told a young resistance fighter as they cleared a corridor. "I killed for them. Now I'll help you bury them." And he did. San knew every corridor, every blind spot. He moved through the halls like he had never left, because in truth a part of him hadn't. That's what made him dangerous. Skeet. In orbit, Rake watched as half of their fleet took hit after hit. The Rust Mare was burning. The Fallen Eagle had lost its left wing. One ship completely vanished in an explosion that turned the stars red, but they were pushing in. "Closer, closer." "Lara," Rake said, "tell the boarding teams to head for the core. If we overload it from inside, we can vaporize the whole station." She hesitated. "That'll kill everyone in there. San, our people, all of them." Rake's jaw clenched. "They knew the risk. You told them this wasn't a suicide mission." He looked at her, the weight of every death in his stare. "It's not, it's a message." Below, inside the base, San and the remaining humans
reached the core chamber, and a swirling vortex of power, humming with dangerous light. They planted charges. Timers blinked red. 2 minutes, San said into the comms. "Get your people out."
But the Dominion wouldn't let them. 3 cruisers descended toward the base, ready to extract their command. Rake saw them coming. He turned to the pilot. "Fly us into them." "What? That's 3 to 1. "I know," Rake growled. "Let's give them something to remember." The Havoc Dawn surged forward, tearing through Dominion fire. Metal peeled, panels exploded, and yet it moved, right into the path of the Zorak command ship. Rake stood firm as everything around him shook, and then the charges inside the base detonated. The entire Tau Ceti fortress went nova. The light was blinding. Silenced for a moment, after the explosion, there was just that. Deep, terrible silence. Then the shockwave hit. The Tau Ceti fortress imploded into itself, ripped apart from within. Chunks of Dominion alloy, once thought indestructible, tumbled through space like broken teeth. 100,000 lights blinked out in a breath. Every transmission from the station went dark, and in its place just dust and fire spinning through the void. On the Havoc Dawn, alarms wailed, warning lights danced, and half the ship was gone. Entire decks had been sheared off from the impact, hull plates floating like leaves in a storm. But it was still there, barely. Inside the shattered bridge, blood dripped from Commander Rake's brow. Smoke filled the air. Half his crew lay injured or worse, and sparks flew from broken panels like dying stars. But he was alive. He coughed once, then pulled himself up, gripping the shattered console with one hand. Through the fractured window, he saw it, the wreckage
of the Zorak fleet. Their command ship gone. No signals, no counterattack. They were done. We did it.
Lara's voice came from behind, barely a whisper. She was limping, holding her side. A piece of metal was stuck in her arm. "We actually did it," Rake didn't say anything, not yet. He walked over to the comms, leaned down and clicked.
On the main transmitter, this time the message wasn't for Earth, it was for everyone. "This is Commander Rake of the Human Resistance," he said, voice hoarse, eyes burning. "To any species watching, listening, hiding, know this. We were called weak. We were mocked, invaded, enslaved, and yet here we are."
He paused, looking out into the field of wreckage and drifting fire. "We bled, we burned, but we never broke. If you're under the Dominion, you don't have to kneel anymore. Earth stands, and now we fight for you," the message echoed. Across the stars, picked up by outlaw beacons, resistance relays, even old satellites, thought dead, and the galaxy changed. Planets that had once trembled began to rise. The Creel overran their chains. The Mizari stormed a Dominion embassy and raised a flag not of their planet, but one of Earth. A red fist painted on white. Humanity had become the rebellion. Back aboard the Dawn, Rake stumbled toward a chair and collapsed into it, breathing heavy. Lara knelt beside him.
"San didn't make it," she whispered. "But without him, we never would have reached the core." Rake nodded slowly. "He bought our future with their past. There were no victory parades, no grand speeches, just debris and exhaustion."
And the quiet realization that Earth was free and had started something far bigger than it ever imagined. In the weeks that followed, more Zorak outposts fell, not by Earth's hands, but by others. Inspired by the unthinkable, a species,
deemed weak,
had burned a galactic empire to its knees, and far out in deep space on a quiet moon colony, a young Creel girl stared up at the stars, clutching a broken helmet someone had smuggled to her. On its side, scrawled in human handwriting, were the words, "Tell them we fought back," she smiled, because now she knew they could too.